Am I the butthole for no longer being close to my daughter after she ignored her mother, my wife, when she was very ill? My daughter is 19, still very young, but old enough to know what she did wrong. 5 years ago, my wife, her biological mother, began to exhibit very strange behavior. She would say weird things, make impulsive decisions, and act strange. She and my daughter would clash often. Now my daughter always was a daddy's girl, but she was still close with her mother. I honestly thought my wife was going through a midlife crisis and dealing with the pressures of working while raising a teen, and we had a come to Jesus talk. About 6 months after the start of that behavior, my wife ended up in a really bad accident. When they were performing emergency surgery, they found a ball-sized tumor pressing her brain, which was the cause of her initial behavior. My wife ended up having to relearn everything from walking to talking. She was still reeling from the effects of the accident and the brain tumor and was mentally and physically disabled for a while. Our daughter refused to be seen in public with my wife. She hated the mess of the wheelchair and her mother's condition. She would also just ignore her mother and speak to me all the time, sometimes even about her. She saw my wife as a burden and would complain to people, to the point where the school called me. At the time I was just struggling to get by and I couldn't alienate my daughter. My wife needed a lot of care and my daughter was in a difficult stage of her life that I couldn't abandon her in. When my daughter went off to college, I was sad but also somehow relieved. My wife still needs a wheelchair sometimes and she has difficulty with some things, but she has honestly improved so much. It really solidified our love for each other and our belief in our marriage. My daughter is coming for summer break after exams. I don't know why, but I feel uncomfortable with her staying for this long. I feel like the sense of closeness I had with her evaporated when she treated her own mother callously. I don't know what to do. My wife is very excited to have our daughter come, but I don't want to see her heartbroken. I've tried getting over it and talking with my therapist, but I just can't feel emotionally close with my daughter, and I'm sure she'll notice. Am I the butthole? Edit. I don't know where any of your assumptions about my wife are coming from. Her mother was never abusive in any way, including mentally or emotionally. When I said my wife did or said strange things, she had regressed in some ways to a child, which was exacerbated by the accident. For example, she would go on and on about a show she watched. She couldn't tell a story. She would spit out food if she didn't like it. My daughter would never have been put in an abusive situation. Update. Mother's Day was terrible. I don't know why I'm updating this. Maybe it's for the few people can sympathize. A lot of the prior comments made untrue, horrible accusations about my wife. My wife was never abusive or even mean, not in any state. It makes it so much harder to understand why our daughter would be so cold to her own mother. My wife's mental state before the accident had regressed into childlike behavior, which is concerning but not the cause of my daughter's coldness. My wife would spit food out back into her plate, bluntly say it tasted bad, and then wipe her nose with her sleeve like a child. I made the error of thinking she was having a midlife crisis because she bought an expensive dress because it was soft. She would forget to do things, her responsibilities. Mother and daughter clashed because she would tell stories with no beginning and end, just rambling. She would ask the same questions over and over. She would promise to pick her up or bring something and forget. Things that would annoy a teenage girl. The tumor were concentrated in the back of the head. When she got into the car accident, it made everything worse. She needed to relearn everything. She is still disabled. We had high expectations for our daughter, but she set them higher for herself. She had a dream school where she wanted to go since she was 12. It meant that I had to chauffeur to so many activities throughout high school and sacrifice a lot to make sure she got the opportunities she wanted. It meant leaving my disabled wife in a longer-term care facility to hopefully recover. It was COVID, so there were long stretches where we didn't visit her. She was there for too long. I never should have left her there. When she came home, my wife was still largely nonverbal and wheelchair-bound. She needed help with everything from eating to going to the bathroom. I earned a little as a caregiver on top of my regular job. My daughter was so cruel and cold to her mother at that time. She wasn't a young kid or even a young teen anymore. She was never expected and never did take care of her mother, so it wasn't caregiver burnout. She would hate if her mother came outside with her and would later blame it on the wheelchair, saying it was bulky and attracted attention. She would ignore her mother and moved away to distance herself physically. I ended up getting a call from the school because a classmate had overheard what she said about her mother and reported it as ableism. I don't know what she said. All I know is that she was very cruel to her mother. I had her in individual therapy and we did therapy as father and daughter. It was her choice to stop, go to Ada. My daughter ended up getting into her dream college. They had an accepted students' weekend and she demanded that her mother stay home even though parents were invited. By that time my wife had made leaps and bounds in progress and was disappointed to stay home. I went and tried to be a proud father. At least she let her mother go to graduation. My daughter came home a few days ago. Her exams were earlier. She informed us that she earned a research position with a professor for the summer. My wife was overjoyed, writing a card all on her own about how proud she was, and she wished she saw her daughter grow into an accomplished young woman. How proud she was to share this moment. My daughter looked sick with guilt. I know what that looks like. On Mother's Day, I made a comment that she couldn't ignore her mother today. She told me to stop saying that. I made another comment about how proud her mother was of her and how much she loved her. I was doing it on purpose. It ended up with her saying she regretted what she did. I always had my suspicions. I interrogated her until she tearfully admitted she hated what her mother had turned into, and she hit her mother once, and she was ashamed to be around her because of what people thought. We got into a shouting match, and she yelled at me that I was so focused on everyone else's behavior because I regretted my own. It's true in a lot of ways. Because of COVID, there were limited visiting hours. But I still didn't visit as much as I should have. I left my wife in a facility to focus on our daughter, but also so that it would be easier for me. There are no siblings, no grandparents to help. I didn't visit as much because I hated how much my wife would sob when I had to leave. I started feeling guiltier when I read a news article about a nurse being sentenced for assaulting a woman in a coma. I thought about my wife. She was nonverbal, had limited short-term memory, and wheelchair-bound. I wouldn't know what would happen. I tried to convince myself that it was fine, but all I did was find more and more news articles about abuse at care facilities. I would have nightmares. I pulled my wife out. I took months of work. I finally got her home. She was taken care of, but not like I would have. There were a few knots in her hair, bruising, sores. I won't lie, the care was brutal. Now I had to juggle taking care of my wife and making sure my daughter was supported and able to reach her dreams. And it was hard seeing my wife like that. She was accomplished and intelligent and now couldn't do a puzzle or eat on her own or go to the bathroom by herself. There was a huge learning curve, and they assigned a nurse to come see my wife every few days. My wife is so sweet. I attend a caregiver's support group, and I feel guilty because my wife doesn't have the fits of temper or the rage or the depression that others did. I felt guilty for being tired. Some had it a lot harder than I did. She got better, and over time, it was like she was almost back to her old self. And she never lost love for either of us. It hurts that she blames herself for how our daughter treated her. Maybe I shouldn't have let my daughter focus on prestige and appearance so much. Maybe I should have realized the signs early on and exposed her to others. My daughter and aren't speaking. My wife just wanted a happy family. I'm looking for therapy for us as a family. Next story. Caught my 35M wife 34 sending pics to Bill 40M. Is our marriage is salvageable at this point? New update. I really don't want to spam this sub I posted today morning, but when I returned from office my account was banned. This will be my last try to post this. My wife Jessica 34 and I 35M have been married for 3 years. and we dated for 2 years before that, and we have 2-year-old daughter. Jessica has 2 sisters. The eldest one, 38F, is married to Jake, 40M. A week ago, I came home from work early and wanted to scare Jessica. I tried to be sneaky, but somehow I slipped and accidentally hurt my back. Jessica came to my rescue. I went to the bedroom, and she went to the kitchen to get an ice pack. Her phone was by the bed, and a WhatsApp notification came from Jake saying, "You've got the best pair I've ever seen." I immediately knew what was happening. I unlocked the phone and saw that she had just sent some pics and video of her TTS to Jake, and there were no previous chats before that. When Jessica came back to the room, I showed her the chat and asked, "How long?" I have known this woman for 10 years, and I have never seen her so mortified. Her eyes got teary, and she said, "Babe, I am sorry, but I can explain," so I said, "Go on." According to her, at the end of 2019, she was struggling with money, and Jake suggested he would help her out. He hinted that he would like to see her pics. I feel like I am writing a PN script at this point. So she did send him pics, and it continued over the years. She swears there was nothing emotional or physical involved, it was purely transactional. I didn't believe any of it, but she showed me on Venmo that MF paid her $300 yesterday. I then told her, "It's been 5 years. Try to remember if anything physical happened." For me, if even half of what she is saying is true, how could something like that not become physical? She started crying and told me she could prove it tomorrow because Jake would get suspicious if she tried to talk to him now. I took her phone, went to a bar, got wasted for the night, and when I came back, she was still there crying. I just slept on the couch. Next day morning, I gave her the phone. She called Jake. Conversation goes something like this. "Jessica, hey, I was wondering if you want some more pics." Jake, "I'm short on money. Yesterday, I spent all of it." Jessica, "We can do something more this time and meet in person. I've changed my mind on that." Jake, "No way. How much are we talking about?" I felt like I was going to puke. I told her that we are done and left for office. I am not a very wealthy dude, but I would consider myself a stable guy who could take care of his family. Now I just feel like I have failed as a man, whose wife had to sell her body to meet her expected lifestyle. When I got home that night, she looked like crap. I asked Jessica why she kept taking money from him after we got married and why she didn't ask me while we were dating. She said she didn't know how to stop and that it was easy money. I left my home that night and told her she can keep the home and the car, but I want $5,050 custody of my child. So here I am now, haven't told anyone about this. It's been a week since, staying in a hotel. I go home in the evening to play with my daughter. I'm speaking with divorce lawyers, and Jessica is constantly talking about marriage counseling. Update. Before getting to the update, some people were asking me to get a paternity test. I don't need one. I know she is my daughter because I am Indian and Jessica, my wife, is white, and my daughter looks like me. Now for the update. After I made that post, I shared my situation with my cousin sister 30F. She is the only family member I have living in the States. I visited her place the next day, and she knocked some sense into me. I realized part of me still didn't want a divorce because I basically married Jessica against my parents' will. They wanted me to have an arranged marriage. So, my failed marriage would hurt my ego. She also arranged a meeting with a divorce lawyer, and no, I am not giving up my house. I was just emotional at that time. From what I understand, in our state, adultery has pretty much zero impact on the assets, so it will likely be a 5,050 split. However, there is a high chance I can get better custody of my daughter because I have a job, and Jessica doesn't. She is also involved in sex work at this point, which could work in my favor. My father-in-law called me last evening, and he was crying. He told me he didn't know what to say to me, and that if he were in my place, he would have left her. Apparently, Jessica got scared and told her family everything after I didn't visit home for 2 days and had blocked her everywhere. I guess I should have done that a little while ago, and Jake is out of his house also. So, I think I will go for a divorce because there is no point of reconciliation at this point when the whole relationship seems fake to me. Update 2. Before getting to the update, some people were cursing me in my DMs, saying I might not earn enough and accusing me of financially abusing my wife and taking advantage of her. I don't think this is the case for me. My salary is close to mid-six figures, and we have a joint account where I put half of my in-hand salary, and we don't even spend that much. For those who were confused about the relationships in my post, my wife was exchanging pics with her brother-in-law, her sister's husband, not mine. Now to the update. After the day Jessica told everyone about the situation, my mother-in-law called and wanted to talk. She was with Jessica after the whole thing happened. I returned to my home later that evening, and her parents and her sister Josie, 38F, Jake's wife, was there. After I got there, Jessica wanted to talk alone. According to her, Jake was trying to pursue her since she was about 16-17. For context, Jake and Josie have been together for 20 years. Now this continued for almost 2 years. He used to make suggestive comments about her body, and she told Josie about it. But Josie didn't believe Jessica at that time and told her she was doing this for attention. Jessica didn't tell her parents either because, according to her, Josie was their parents' favorite, so nobody would have believed her. Jake didn't do anything between those years besides casual flirting until 2019 when Jessica was having problems with rent and the whole transactional thing happened. I asked why she didn't ask me about it, and she said we were only 1 month into dating and it could have looked bad. She swears nothing happened after that until last year when Jake and Josie started having problems in their marriage, and he started messaging Jessica again. She didn't entertain him at first, but she had gained some weight from pregnancy and thought I was ignoring her because of it, which I was not. At that time, I was working close to 13-14 hours a day to change my niche to another tech stack. Massive layoffs were also going on, so it was a pretty bad time. Now she admitted that she liked the attention and validation. This time-ish called herself an attention bad woman, but she didn't had any feelings towards him. They started exchanging pics and money, and this happened 3 times. Then she admitted it was cheating, although there were no emotional or physical actions from her side, but she said that she shouldn't have done it. I asked her why she didn't tell me about Jake harassing her when we first met or started dating. She said she thought I wouldn't have believed her and that it was in the past. Then I asked why she didn't tell me the first time I found out about this. Her answer was the same. She believed I wouldn't have believed her because nobody else knew about this. I was just sad about the fact she doesn't trust me enough to tell me such a horrific incident. Now, I did something I am not very proud of. I asked her about a paternity test. I know it was stupid, but emotionally I was in a weird place at that moment. She was totally emotionless throughout the whole conversation, but after hearing about the test, she broke down crying and started hyperventilating. I started crying too. After about 10 minutes or so, we stopped crying, and she said okay, then asked me if we are getting a divorce. I said I don't know. She then said we should get a postnup before I do something like that. That line felt like a tight slap to my face. I was like, you're not even gonna convince me not to go through with it. Then she left with her parents. The next day, she called crying, asking not to get a divorce and to start marriage counseling. Obviously, I said okay. So here we are now after some weird couple of days, still getting the postnup. Her Ike starting next week, Armex starting next month. Hopefully, trust will return someday. Also, Jake is denning all that according to him Jessica seduced him for money and my Sil is getting a divorce. I know some people are gonna call me a doormat, but I don't care. Update 3. Update on my marriage. We are separating for a while, not legally. She is just moving to her parents' house for at least 6 months. She hasn't done anything wrong in the past 2 weeks. Then again, she hasn't done anything wrong in the last year either, and I can't get her out of my mind and end up checking my phone every few minutes. So, I thought I needed to clear my mind to decide if I really want to reconcile or not. Maybe 6 months would be a good amount of time. We are getting a postnup and keeping all my assets to myself. I'm not sure how that's going to play out if we get a divorce, even if it's amicable. Next story. My twin sister 18F and I 18F took a genetic test, and we did not share any DNA. What should my next step be when no one in the family is telling me why? My twin and I are fraternal twins. Recently, we took a genetic test for fun because we wanted to see what we shared and the differences between us. Since we still share genes, fraternal twins are like siblings genetically. My grandparents had suggested the tests and got them for us, so our parents didn't know about it. But our results made no sense. My twins was coming up almost completely as Eastern European and Western European, which makes sense as most of my family are Croatian, German, or Austrian. So all of that would be accurate. But mine wasn't anything like that. It was almost completely Scandinavian, with some Russian and a couple of other places, neither of which were on my twin's result. She had a very small percentage of Scandinavian, but that was it, and we had no matched DNA, which clearly seemed impossible. We were literally twins, we have to share DNA. My twin said they must have mixed my sample up with someone else. We ended up contacting the company, and my twin and I took a test again. It was the same result. Both my twin and I were really confused. We told our grandparents, and they just said that was interesting, and said nothing else. My twin said we should tell our parents and see if they had ever done a genetic test, or if any of our siblings had, and then we could see if somehow ours were still right. I mean, it kind of made sense I'd have Scandinavian, because I'm much taller than my mother, and quite a bit taller than my twin, and I'm way better at football and handball than she is. And I'm very blonde compared to the rest of my family, but I had thought it was the German. When we told our mother, they reacted almost the same way as my grandparents, but she seemed annoyed, and said that they're inaccurate anyway, and our grandparents shouldn't have told us to take one. And when we asked our father, he basically said nothing. I'm confused. I know my twin thinks it's just a mistake, but I don't think so. We have to share DNA, about 50%. That's how twins and siblings work. Even though we're fraternal, we should still share quite a bit of DNA. But other explanations don't make sense. My mother can't have cheated on my father, because my twin and I would still share DNA, just less, because we would have different fathers. The results mean we can't share a parent, or even be related. But I don't see why my parents would adopt me if I'm not their child, when I don't think they've ever been to Scandinavia, and why they'd adopt a baby that's almost exactly the same age as their baby. I'm panicking. The person I'm closest with in the whole world, who I thought I even shared the womb with, might not even be related to me. My birthday might not even be real. None of this makes any sense, and no one is telling me the truth. I'm also scared my twin might tell her boyfriend about it, and then people might end up knowing that I'm some kind of fraud and my family isn't my family at all. Edit. I called the clinic where my mother gave birth to all of my siblings. The day of my birthday, my mother is in the records but only for one birth. Not two, not twins. I don't know if it's an error or my mother didn't give birth to me. Relevant comments. OP on asking her extended family members for answers and ask her parents and grandparents. OP, I don't think they want to tell me anything. They're all acting weirdly now, and I heard my mother yelling at people on the phone. I don't know what's going on, but there's no way they want to tell me what's going on. I looked when my twin wasn't there, but I had no close ones, only very distant ones. Only people who are my 8th cousins and that sort of thing. So not very helpful. She sounded a bit too polite for that sometimes, and sometimes at odd times of day, so I'm not sure it was always my grandparents, probably my father too. OP on her mother's records at the clinic and see if it was possible she was swapped at birth. OP sadly, my mother has given birth every time in a private clinic that is very small. She prefers it. She thinks hospitals are disgusting, and she prefers knowing the doctors. So while that is possible, and I'll look into getting parental DNA done. It would be very concerning if that had happened because at most, maybe 3 or 4 other women would have given birth at a similar time as her. But possible, definitely. OP on getting her birth certificate from her parents, which might reveal more details on her background. OP, I didn't think about my birth certificate. I'll ask them, but if they don't give it to me, then I'm sure it shouldn't be too difficult to find. OP on if her grandparents knew anything about her situation. OP, kind of, I did ask them why they suggested it, and my grandmother said that it doesn't matter. I said clearly it does if the results are right, but she just said she doesn't know anything and to tell my mother that. I don't know why they deliberately upset my parents with this, but I'm only assuming that they wanted me to know. But I don't know why. I think my grandmother thinks I should figure it out myself now I know, but I literally have no clue when no one will tell me anything at all. Update. So, I'm adopted, which was probably quite obvious as soon as I got the results, but I guess I was in denial. My parents told me a couple of days ago, not much, but a bit. I know now that my mother was Danish, and my father's old girlfriend from when he was really young, which is seriously weird. I asked them a lot of questions, but I didn't get answers to all of them. I don't know who my father is, how my parents were able to adopt me and why, if she's even alive, nothing. But thankfully I am actually legally adopted by them, which is a relief since I was worried I might not be. And my birthday is actually my birthday, so they haven't been committing any weird fraud. It's very weird. My sister has been acting weirdly, and my family as well. But in some ways, it's a relief. My parents still feel like my parents, and my siblings like my siblings. I know that technically they're not, but I don't feel too upset about it. I'm just upset they lied, and also won't tell me everything. I don't know if they genuinely don't know, or don't want to talk about it, but at least I have an idea about everything now. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about it, but I'm glad I know about things now. Plus now I have a country that's actually good at football to support, which is nice. Maybe someday I'll find out everything, maybe not. I could probably look her up and find her if I wanted to, but I'm not sure if I do, if she's still alive. Although everything is different, it doesn't feel so bad, but it does at the same time. It's very weird. But I have a family that loves me, so it could be much worse. I feel sad about my twin, since we're not actually related, which feels really different, and she's acting different as well. But I still love her a lot, and my parents as well. I think it will take some time to know how I really feel. In some ways I want to be mad at everyone and do stupid things, but that's only sometimes, and overall I feel okay, so that's good. And eventually I think I'll be content with how everything is. Relevant comments. OP on looking into her background to find her biological relatives, especially birth parents. OP, I didn't think of that. Maybe at some point I will, but right now I'm happy with my family and how things are, and I don't really want to go through all of that right now. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel James Stories.